Hello, my name is Jean Harvey in Montreal. My topic today, the connection between strategy and processes in general, and more specifically, the process design methodology and the relationship between these two topics. I'll start with a theoretical presentation, linking strategy to processes. I will then move to an example, relatively simple example, and I'll finish with an example of a very complex service delivery process. Let's get started. The theory of it first, strategy to process, the connection. Here's a conceptualization of what I'm talking about here. Imagine that this is a market, this big circle is a market, and that segmenting consists in grouping in small circles. People with various characteristic need, features, preferences, attitude, whatever. I will not address how to segment here. This is part of our marketing, and I will assume that you are broadly familiar with the notion of segmentation. So the red circles here are segments. In blue here, you've got competitors, various companies who are targeting various market segments. And assume that my company has gone through an assessment of core competencies and capabilities, strengths and weaknesses, and as a result of that has targeted 3 market segments. This, of course, what I just said in one sentence, is a complete strategic analysis of market, competition, differentiation, distinctive competence, and so on. I will not discuss such a course here, and again, I will assume that you have a basic familiarity with these notions. So, once you have segmented, first verb, segmented, then you targeting specific market segments. And you then position yourself. That is, you develop service concepts to address these segments. What's a service concept? A service concept is the customer benefit package, as well as the how you're going to create these benefits, these advantages for your customers. That is, the service features per se, and the formula through which these features will create the benefits that will differentiate you from your competition. Of course, you could also develop a single concept for several market segments. Again, this is marketing and strategic issues. My topic here is, once this is done, how do you go inwards towards the development and the focusing of processes that will be nimble, that will deliver your concept day in and day out with superior execution or operational excellence. So, one market segment here. Let's take the major competitor here. We have a game plan here, we have a service concept, and we are focusing on a number of customer needs. The logical steps from there is to translate those needs and the degree of satisfaction of each of those needs into metrics. We call the needs, by the way, the vital needs, critical to satisfaction, or CTS criteria. 80-20, we focus on the vital ones. These must be measured. If we cannot measure them, we cannot deliver them. We cannot design, select the best process and improve them through time. Customer surveys are fundamental, but process metrics that correlate to these surveys, that will give you quick feedback day in and day out, are also fundamental. We call these critical to quality, critical to delivery, and critical to cost, depending on the type of features of a customer need that they measure. Behind that, core processes deliver the value. Support processes create the infrastructure. And if I had more space here, I could also put in enabling processes, as we will discuss in a later video. You can break down a process into sub-process, and each sub-process can be further broken down and so on by level. This is what we have called a FAST diagram, or functional analysis, in another video. You break down a process into lower level processes to the question how. And this is meant to be generic and not address at this point the specific way through which each of these sub-processes or functions will be achieved. So this is the way value is created, but we design it from the outside, from the strategy to customer need. Then we will go to the metrics, from the metric to the process, and downwards, eventually allowing us to scope specific processes that we have to design or improve. This is the connection, connecting metrics to specific process. House 1, House 2 referred to the House of Quality technique. We will use a simplified version of that technique, basically a correlation matrix, to help us focus on the vital few needs, the vital few metrics, and the vital few processes. To make sure that, because those are expensive, time-consuming practices, that we really focus on the biggest bang for the design buck. The key notions then here: segmenting, targeting, positioning, developing the concept, service concept, the value proposition, which is a formulation of the concept in terms of bringing out the differentiation, the specific value that we're creating that beats our competitor. The value creating processes, enabling and support processes, process decomposition, critical to satisfaction element, customer need, vital customer needs, metrics, quality, delivery, cost, and the connection between value, the benefit package that is superior to competitors' offering, through metrics, through processes and sub-processes. So that when you scope a process, you've got a chain that connects this process to differentiation and to competitive advantage. Fundamental thing to do before you invest. Now, this is all very theoretical, so examples should help. Let's start with a first simplified example, but very real. It's something that a problem that I've had a couple of months ago, and that will illustrate the connection in a real life situation. Now, this is an iPad, TV, Apple TV in between, a modem with a Wi-Fi system, the Air system of Apple, and you download movie through iTunes, you put them on your iPad, and you send them directly to your TV. Now, this is how it's supposed to be beautiful, but there are many technologies involved, many softwares, many hardware, many pieces of hardware that have to work together. And instructions are not always easy to come by. So as I was trying to do that, it wasn't working. So I was trying to get help. But of course, is the problem with the modem? Is the problem with the cable service provider? Is the problem with the piece of hardware that we call the Apple TV? Where's the problem in the system? When I contacted one provider, they would systematically say it's the other guy. That's the problem. And I was sort of left up there with all these nice tools. Great expectations created by the promise that was made, the value proposition that I had read and that had driven me to buy the system in the first place. So let's use this situation. First, as the customer, here's my corridor. It won't work. I look at the manual online and I surf a social website. I check my home network and equipment. I call my internet service provider. I write to support and try to call by phone. I do some chat here and there. I call a friend. I attend the various solution. As I go through my corridor, I have needs, expectations, desires. Those are in green here. This is well done in Post-its. You start by describing the customer corridor and then put his shoes on. What does he feel like at that time? What would he like? An experience is a sequence of emotions. I'd like this to be so easy that even a child could do it. I want a simple fix immediately. Now. I want to know what's wrong. I need to be reassured. Tell me if it's going to cost me and how much. Depending on the customer, who he is, what he does. If you're able to describe his mental state at that time and his needs, then you can distill this and boil it down using affinity diagram to the CTS, critical to satisfaction element. In this case, reliability, provide the desired result. Assurance, reassure me. I want to feel that I'm in competent hands. Respond to my specific need. Follow up, respect. Of course, those are not all equally important. Reliability, fix it every time when I call. Make sure it works and that the problem is not recurring. That's reliability for me. That's the critical need that I have. As I said earlier, from these that we call CTS, we'll go to metrics because we need to measure that. For each of those, how can I measure reliability? Well, quality of diagnosis, time to resolve issue, number of complaints, and so on. You generate these metrics through brainstorming, starting from each of the critical needs and asking yourself, how could we possibly measure that? Including Likert scale. Whatever scale is possible, that could be repeatable, reproducible, of course. You need a measurement scale that two people seeing the same phenomenon will come up with the same value for it. You need a valid measurement scale, repeatable, reproducible. So, but at first you generate the metrics, brainstorming, and you connect the metrics to the CTS. We call these the CTQ, quality, CTD, delivery, and CTC, cost. Then you're in a position to generate what processes impact the values of these metrics. Answer email, answer call, chat, diagnose problem, visit customer site, receive complaint from customer. Those are value creating processes. They are central to affecting the metrics that will affect the customer perception of critical to satisfaction elements. That will, in other words, resolve quickly his problem and turn his experience into a positive, even memorable experience that he will tell around to other people. These processes here, the value creating, are supported and enabled by other processes. Identify system-wide issues, maintain knowledge base, supervise call center, assign technician. These processes support and enable these value creating processes which impact the critical targets that we need to meet. And if we do, and if we get the right metric, the right measurement system, the right target value, that will produce satisfaction for the target customer. It will beat competition. It will make us more competitive. Then we are ready to look at these processes. We need to design process whose voice fall within the voice of the customer as defined here. The voice of the process is something we'll discuss in another video. A process speaks in variation. Variation is the enemy of value. More variation, less value. More variation, less value. As you reduce variation, the voice of the process falls within the voice of the customer, the target here. You get a process that becomes increasingly capable. We call this process capability. Here you have in a nutshell then the connection between what the customer does, his experience, his needs, his vital needs, the 80-20. The metrics, the processes. And we go from the customer in. And then we've set the design specification, the parameters to which the process that we need must be designed. Let's now look at this using a different representation of the same thing to help you understand. CTSs are customer needs. They are weighted in terms of their importance. They come from an understanding of the segment, the customer corridor, the customer needs, the affinity diagram that distills the CTS, and then a weighting, assigning weights to the most important customer needs. The metrics and the processes. The processes here are represented by a FAST diagram. Again, refer you here to another video on that. What you do, your processes impact the metrics, and the metrics are correlated to the vital customer needs. Processes work this way, we design them this way. Customer in, or market in, if you like. The idea of the methodology we're using is to focus on the vital few, on the 20%. And for this we use house of quality technique, which is a matrix that allows us, a correlation matrix, allowing us to isolate the most important needs to the most important metrics to the most important processes. Focusing on these makes sure that we don't reinvent the wheel and that we get the biggest bang for the design buck. Here's the DCDV methodology. The first D is define. It is the object of 2 videos, the process basic with the airport example, and then the bidding process for software development that you have. So the techniques are presented there. Once the project is defined, then you characterize. This is really what I just explained, the characterize phase. Who are the customer? What do they want? What are we going to measure, and what are the target value, the measurement system, voice of customer? What do we have to do, and what are the critical functionalities? You see the SciTalk and the FAST diagram already presented here are reviewed at this point. And house of quality is used. It sounds more complicated than it is. There are really correlation matrices that help us separate the vital few metrics from the trivial many. The vital few processes from the trivial many again. Once you finish this characterize phase, you haven't designed anything. But you've set yourselves up to be ready to design something to a spec. The specification meeting being what are the processes and what are the target that they must meet. Then you move into design. The design phase of the methodology is divided into 2 parts. High-level design, detailed design. The logic of this is that you should first explore at a high level before get bogged down in detail. A common mistake in developing and designing new processes is that the design team gets wedded too quickly to an idea, and often the boss's idea. They don't explore alternative, and because of time pressure, time to market, they zoom into the detail phase, which takes much more resources, much longer, so they start that too early. The methodology here ensures that we take the time before we get into the costly and time-consuming part of detail design, that we do give a few kick at the can. We generate concepts, we share that with the organization, we come back and we redesign them. It goes fairly fast. A day or 2 spent here will save potentially millions of dollars and represent big percentage point in market share and market penetration. So the design phase, again, there are techniques here which I will not present in this specific video. You come out of there with the blueprint of a new process, and you got to check, that is the verified part, the DCDV, the verified part. Check it out. Simulate it at first, then run a prototype somewhere, a demo, a pilot project to prove the concept before you deploy it, and you again make the big investment of the deployment part. It takes a little more time. It takes high-level resources. It may reduce your time to market. It will reduce very much your repairs in the market and the destruction of your image by failure in the market. Early bird gets the worm. That's true. But it is the second mouse that gets the cheese. Maybe worthwhile to take a little more time. This, in short, then, is an overview of the DCDV methodology. Those are the central notions: customer experience, customer corridor, activity cycle is used as well, affinity diagram, metric generation, house of quality, the matrix. House 1 and House 2 are two specific matrix. The first one going from CTS to metrics, the second one from metrics to processes. The methodology itself, the matrix, and from critical needs to critical process via critical metrics. Essentially, this summarizes what we have just done.